Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and I am so excited to be celebrating 10 years of meaningful conversations with you. As we step into our new primetime hour, it's such an honor to share this exciting new chapter with you. So whether you're starting your day out, headed to work, or listening from wherever you are, this hour is designed to bring you thoughtful dialogue, fresh insight, and inspiring stories so you can make every moment count. So thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive in. We're here today with special guest Linda Drattell, who's here to share with us her new upcoming book, The Peccadilloes of Filamena Phipps. So when the lines between the ordinary and the magical blur, what does it really mean to belong? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Linda Drattell is an award-winning poet and writer who splits her time between Boulder, Colorado and Barcelona. Her poems have been published in online magazines and in print with various anthologies and literary magazines. So welcome to the show, Linda Drattell.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. But before we get started, can you share with us a moment that you decided to start writing?
Sure. First of all, I have 3 published books, a children's book and 2 poetry books. And what is coming out this fall is my debut novel, The Peccadilloes of Filamena Phipps. But what started me writing, actually, I have to attribute to my father, who got me hooked on poetry when I was in my teens. There were 3 poets in particular, Robert Frost, Ogden Nash, and Robert Service. And each of them really, really influenced me about observation, humor, sharing a feeling or a message about everyday life, putting a twist in there. And that carried me. And I wrote my first poems when I was a teenager. And those actually were published in my first poetry collection. And then I just sort of forgot about poetry and grew up. And then as an adult, I decided to write this novel that's getting published now. And it was because I saw a lot of people being rejected in our society just because they were different for whatever reason. And it just really bothered me. So I wrote a book about it. Took me 30 years to get it right, but I wrote a book. And in the process, while I was going back and forward about writing this book, I went back to poetry. So in all these instances, I took a class, I have to say, to sidestep a moment, I took a class with Amanda Gorman, and she said, the reason we write is because we want to inform, persuade, explain, narrate, entertain, and inspire. And I feel that that is exactly why I write. That has affected me in all of my books.
What a profound story you have. And can you share with us a little bit about the Peccadilloes of Filamena Phipps?
Sure, no problem. I have to say, I have focused on moral fault lines, and that has permeated through all of my writing. And it served as a muse for me. There are underlying fissures that fracture societal cohesion, that fragment our understanding of what is right versus what is wrong, and they threaten to break in us under severe stress. In The Peccadilloes of Filamena Phipps, Philomena, whose birth name is Ferayenskela, doesn't fit in North Chelsea, which is an affluent community which prizes homogeneity. A clique that consists of Philomena's neighbors drives informal but ultimately rigid community decisions, such as where to shop, what to buy, with whom to socialize. And Philomena tries to accommodate her neighbors, but to them, she's just totally different. She's a threat. They want her to conform, forget her customs, dress and cook and raise her children like they do. When she is confronted by her neighbor's bullying, she has to decide how much bullying should she tolerate? What happens when she dissents? How can she dissent effectively and still remain a part of her community? So those are all the questions I explore in that novel.
What profound questions. What drew you to this? Because you have such a lyrical style of writing. What drew you to that?
Well, it's very funny. I thought I was drawing on personal experience. And when I started the book, it was a short story, about 20 pages. And I read it aloud to some of my friends. And they all got mad at me. And they said, "You're writing about me." And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm writing about me." And that's when I realized it was such a universal story. Yeah, everyone feels isolated in their own way from others in the community for whatever reason. And I remember I was sitting in a McDonald's with my daughter, and we were moving. And this woman, who I thought was such a popular woman, said to me, "I know where you're moving." And I said, "Really?" She goes, "It's this neighborhood. Nobody's friendly." And she was just so upset and quiet. And I thought, oh my God, this woman who I thought was so popular is feeling this way. So it can be about anybody.
Well, I love how your book also dives into humor and satire to help explore some deeper topics. Can you share a little on that for us?
So I focused on humor. I use it as a tool, and I found that it's very effective. It's very effective in giving us a pause, because sometimes discussion about something is so deep and is so stressful that we need a break from it. And so when you throw in some humor, it gives the reader a chance to just sit back and take a breath. It's kind of like a comma in a sentence. It gives you a chance to think about what was just said. And sometimes it enables the reader to realize a twist without actually saying what happened. When you put in a little bit of humor, they think, "Oh, that's funny," and then they get the point without you actually having to say the point.
That's a nice way of bringing that all together so people really understand. What can readers expect from the world that you've created in this novel?
Well, in this novel, I also bring in magical realism. Usually that is something that Latin American writers use, and it's because they're writing about a dictator, and it's the only way to address the dictator that's acceptable, who is applying stringent rules that nobody can change. And in this situation, the dictator is the community, it's the neighborhoods who don't want any change. And so in Philomena's case, she's very spiritual. She refuses to change because of her neighbors. And so she's very mindful in that way. And because she's very mindful toward herself, she's also mindful toward other people. And she enables a space for people to grow in her presence. And so as a result, people grow and vegetables grow and animals grow. And so they all gravitate toward her, except for, of course, this clique of neighbors that don't want her there. So she has a garden that starts growing in her presence and overtakes her yard and grows down the street and overtakes the sidewalk and the street. And people hear about her produce, and then there are long lines to want to buy it. And so it creates a very funny situation because the garden is smothering out the very neighbors that want to smother her.
Ooh, I love that. So that leaves us thinking about the book. How did your background influence your approach to storytelling?
I'm not quite sure of my background. Well, I have a lot of different backgrounds. First, I've lived on three different continents, so I know what it's like to be an expat and what it's like to try to belong. I became deafened in my 30s and had to relearn how to belong in society. Right now, I have a cochlear implant, but that's just recent. So for about 30 years, I lived without sound. I had to learn sign language and depend on interpreters and um, beg to join conferences. So for writing, it's been very difficult for me to be able to be included in a lot of different group situations. So I know what it's like to not be allowed to belong. So I guess that has informed me in my writing.
In what ways has your international experience shaped your perspective as a writer?
You get a sense of what things are like in other places. You learn about the cultures. So I really enjoyed developing Philomena as someone who has grown up elsewhere. Right now, I live 6 months out of the year in Barcelona, and I really enjoy that. So a lot of what I describe of her cultural traditions, like I have her wanting New North Chelsea. I want her to have that town have the same sort of celebrations that her hometown had where she grew up. And I don't say where she grew up, I just make it vague. So it could be anybody who's grown up anywhere. But I want them to have a town flag and town parades and a town bread. And I was thinking of like the ensayamada that's here in Spain. And they have parades here all the time in Barcelona, and they have celebrations all the time. And at one point, Philomena asked her new husband in North Chelsea, well, how do you celebrate being a member of North Chelsea? And he's like, well, we know who we are. We don't need to celebrate it. And she just can't get past that. So it's just been a lot of fun learning the cultures of other places and applying that.
How has your work, and especially because I know that you're deaf and hard of hearing, how's that community informed your writing as well?
I think that it has informed me. I worked for a number of years for a deaf agency when I lived in California, and I really enjoy the deaf community. It's very tight. It's a very close, supportive community of each other. So, maybe there's that also because they also celebrate a lot of things to support their identity. There's Pa Day where I don't know, there's just a lot of celebrations. And so being a part of the deaf agency, um, we supported all of those celebrations. So maybe there's a part of that too.
That's all interwoven in that. What does personal growth look like for the characters in this story?
Well, Philomena learns to overcome her need to be accepted by this clique, and that it's important to reach out to everybody and it's important to accept herself. She is running against the incumbent mayor for public office. And of course, he's handsome and he falls in love with her. And he guides her as to the needs of public office. And I discuss a lot of what that is, what the public expects of the people in public office, what they expect of politicians, and what his group is like. He assumes that he will always be elected because he fits the part. And she teaches him Well, no, you are elected because you fill a certain need. And as long as you fill that need, as long as you are providing them what they must have, then you get elected. And I'm saying it in a very simple way, but it gets expressed throughout the book, and he learns that she's correct. So that's his growth. And then the neighbors, it's a very tight clique, but then one by one, several of them start realizing that they don't agree with the rest of the clique, that they have their own needs and their own feelings, and there are things that they want that are more than what the clique provides. And their own personalities clash. So there's an analysis of that.
Pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. So, what challenges did you kind of experience while writing your novel?
Well, the challenges that I have had, first of all, is being able to attend writers' conferences. It's been very frustrating because they don't provide communication access. There's only one Bay Area, I forgot the name of it, but there's a Bay Area Writers Conference, and I just want to applaud them because they have provided interpreters every year. But the other writers' conferences don't do that, and they come up with all kinds of excuses. One writers' conference last year agreed to provide me with an interpreter, and now they ghost me. I guess they realized it was too expensive. And so I appreciate the cost. I understand, but it does leave me out in the cold, and that's what's very frustrating. I don't get the opportunity to mingle with other writers and to meet agents and other professionals in the field. So that that is something that other writers get to do. But one-on-one, I learned to work around it. One of the things I found is if you go to the conference schedule, you find the list of people who are going to speak. And if you contact them individually, they usually are willing to work with you. So I've hired them individually and worked around it that way.
Well, it just means that we can do better as a society to help make sure that everyone's accommodated. And so do better, these guys, these groups. Come on, you could do better. How does this novel differ from your work in poetry and children's books?
Well, my work in poetry and the children's book is interesting. I co-wrote that with my Spanish tutor. We were working one-on-one, and she was coming to my house, and she was great. She learned a little bit of sign language, and one day she said to me, okay, we're going to study children's books because it's hard for you to hear me. And then she said, it's time for you to write a children's book. So then we talked about what this children's book would be, and we decided it would be about a dragon. And we talked about this dragon, how he's afraid to make friends because he's so different. He has a long tail and he has spikes and he breathes fire. And suddenly I said, her name is Eve. And I said, Eve, this dragon is me. It's like me when I lost my hearing. I self-isolate because I think nobody would want to be my friend. And this dragon doesn't want to meet anyone because he's afraid. And she said, no, Linda, this dragon is me because I'm half Mexican, half American, and I don't fit in anywhere, and I'm afraid to meet people. So we were cracking up laughing. And then we hired an illustrator, and he said, no, that dragon is me because I'm the son of Filipino immigrants, and I don't fit in anywhere. So we really had fun writing that book together. And it was from the perspective of someone who doesn't feel like they fit in and is afraid to fit in. And that book went on to win a Distinguished Favorite Award from Independent Book Awards. So that's a totally opposite perspective than Philomena is, and that is for children. And then my poetry, I use different poetry forms to also convey different experiences. Um, I've I use observation, humor. I share a feeling or a message. I feel like there's so much going on around me. There's, in addition to moral fault lines, there's also the threat of erasure. There's this sense of isolation and erasure that go hand in hand together. It's a theme that's long explored by writers. George Orwell understood the quiet ache of isolation on a human level and its connection with erasure to temper, weaken, and even obviate a person's identity by invalidating them. And he explored emotional themes such as alienation, truth, and the struggle to connect authentically in an oppressively conformist world, such as in Animal Farm and in 1984. And he wrote that the worst loneliness is being surrounded by people who can't perceive you for who you are, have no conception of you, can't begin to understand you, and you feel yourself evaporate into thin air. So a lot of my poems are about that. It's also in Philomena because she's being made to forget who she is, and she's being told to conform and adapt. But in my poetry, it takes on a more physical sense. My poem, The Torment and the Tree, tells the story of a tree that fights the strong current of a raging river that ultimately will have its way and uproot the tree, but not until the tree struggles with all its might until the end for its survival. In Hunt, a herd of bison must fight off its predator, the wolves, and while at the same time will lose a fight, sometimes will lose a fight, the herd has learned what it must do to survive. In my poem, Tempest, my horse fights against the constraints of his stall, preferring instead to be free to experience the wind and the rain. In Old Man, my aging horse runs with the younger horses and insists on not being discounted simply because of his age, that he's still got it in him. So people have let me know that they identify with a specific poem. And for some, The Torment and the Tree may represent a nation battling for its survival. Two women confided to me that this poem helped them greatly while undergoing chemotherapy. One older gentleman told me he especially identified with Old Man, and others were drawn to the pain from the second arrow in Promenade des Anglais, where I describe how my husband and I survived a terror attack in Nice, France in 2016. And then my second collection, The Lighter Side of Horse Manure, which I use a lot of humor. I wrote, the barn manager hates my horse hooves, and I imagine him saying thank you, and others as a response to a real situation where the barn manager insisted that my horse, Vegas, no longer held any value because of his age and should be put down. In essence, his life should be erased. Vegas had every right to live his full life. He had much more to express, even as he grew old. He was also a beloved member of my family. So I guess that's the difference.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I understand, I mean, every time I have a pet, they're not pets. They are beloved members of our family. So, my goodness, I mean, your work is just so profound. Where can our readers and listeners go to connect with you and be part of your community?
So my two poetry books are available through the publisher Finishing Line Press, and you just go to their website. They have a bookstore, or you can go to Amazon or to bookshop.org and find your local bookstore, and they can order it. And my children's book, Who Wants to Be Friends with a Dragon, is available through Dorrance Publishing Company. And again, go to their bookstore and order through them, or also through Amazon. And my books are also available through BarnesandNobleOnline.com. And my book Philomena will not be available until I think October. So I don't have a link for that, but that will be available through Stairwell Books.
And what is your website?
My website is www.lindadrattell.com.
Well, Linda, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Linda. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your upcoming book, The Peccadilloes of Filamena Phipps. Make sure to visit Linda's website at lindadrattell.com for more information on her work and to be part of her community. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Mary Ann, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.